Hello, I'm going to turn off the camera so that it doesn't get in the way. Whoop, I've disappeared. And let's get rid of the 319. Right, so let's change the promo to scenario tutorial. Right, this isn't really so much a complete scenario type tutorial as much as a bunch of questions have been asked since the last scenario tutorial, and I thought it would make some sense to address some of those questions. So what were those questions? 1. Stopping points. What are they? How do you use them? 2. How do you do temporary speed restrictions? 3. How do you move instructions between locos? Meaning, how do you change the loco, say, for a player service, without having to redo everything? AI trains and train priority. So let's have a look at how you can play about with making the player have to wait for AI. And the next one is scenery placement and scene construction. So we'll have a look at some of the stuff that you can do there, which is basically about adding scenery into scenarios. And then the last one is converting career scenarios to standard scenarios and vice versa, which isn't really trivial, but it's certainly not hard, and so it's worth knowing how to do it. Right, one of the other topics that was asked a few times was thunder and lightning. So we did weather and advanced weather and scripted weather and so forth. And one of the things that you can do with that is you can do thunder flashes, or some thunder sounds, lightning flashes. I'm not there yet on that tutorial. I tried to get that one ready for today, but I'm not there yet. So apologies, that one won't be in today. I'll see if I can do it next week though. I've sort of got basically everything in the right place. I just need to make it all work now. Right, so let's build a scenario. So I'm in my non-beta version of the game. So this has got the this just got TS 2015 Steam Edition. So if we go ahead and do a build, and London Peterborough, oops, no, in the scenario tab. So yes, if you haven't seen this before, because I haven't in the menu, let me go back to the beginning. Build. And then once you're in here, you've got the route tab, scenario, and publish. So route is to make a new route. Scenario is to make a scenario. We'll cover that in just a minute. Publish is how you get your stuff uploaded onto Steam Workshop. So under scenario, if we look here, it says Academy, that's the route, and then it lists all the scenarios for it, because it's selected route. Now we've got all of the other routes in here, so if we pick London Peterborough, it'll expand it and we can see all of the scenarios underneath it. We're going to create a new one, we're not going to edit one of the existing ones. If you wanted to edit an existing one, you can click that, and then there's a clone button. So if I click that, click the clone button, it will make a copy of it. But we're going to start from scratch. And we're going to call this one test scenario, standard scenario, and we're going to start it at, well, none of those. That apparently is New York, New Haven. Let me just make sure we're pointing at the right thing here. That's more like it. Okay, test scenario. That's probably because I was selected on a scenario, not on the route, and it was showing the last route that was selected or something. Okay, so we're going to start, let's go somewhere in the middle, Alexandra Palace, that will do. So if we start at Alexandra Palace, it'll be a standard scenario, and what we'll do later on is we'll convert this scenario to a tutorial scenario, and we will we'll click create. So, what are we going to do first? Excuse me. Let's wait for this to load. We'll get there eventually. Once it's loaded. No, we haven't done the raffle, folks. The raffle will be probably after this. There we go. Right. So first of all, if I haven't mentioned it before, this square is the token for the scenario in the route. If you select it, you can move it around. Now this token is really important for a number of reasons. So you can double click on any of these tokens to get back to and reload a different scenario. So if we double click it, it'll bring up this settings panel over here. The other thing that this is really important about is that this is when you first load a scenario when you're playing it, what it will do is it will work out what the coordinates of this are, and it will load the area around this bit here. If your player train is then on the other side of the route, what happens is that the game starts with no scenery, because it's loaded the wrong scenery in basically, and then starts loading the scenery in and all around it. So you need to make sure that your player train is in the same general vicinity as this token, and you can move it around, but do be careful moving it, and if you move it the wrong too far, then you can always undo and put it back where it was, but you can move it around as long as you're careful with what you're doing with that. If it disappears, then hit the undo button, which is this one over here. Chris says you can cheat by selecting Force Cab View. That doesn't really help, unfortunately, because you'll still see all the scenery loading around you, which just doesn't look very nice. So let's place an AI train. I'm going to place the AI train here. Sorry, one of the player trains here. We'll just use 365s because that's nice and easy for cart. We'll stick that there, and then over here, let's put a HST. So I'm just clicking and then clicking again where I want the trains to appear. Let's put a driver on there and a driver on there. Kamali makes an interesting point. So we're having a discussion on the TS Live Steam group about the problems that you've experienced when you've made scenarios, whether or not you've found answers to them, and let us know what those problems are. Let me know what those problems are. If you found the solution, say what that was as well. And what we're going to do, just so thanks for joining, is have another special tutorial section where we try and go through some of those problems and share the solutions for them. Kamali made a good suggestion about actually doing something like that, and I thought the easiest way to do that was just to find out what problems you're all experiencing and then see if we can help fix those problems. Some of it is probably down to misconceptions about what you can and can't do. Some of it is just simply understanding how you do it. Got problem now. The dispatcher is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to in 99% of the cases. What's wrong is in a lot of cases there are other rules going on, and if you don't understand those rules, it can look like it because it does just very, very confused. I'm going to do a tutorial on Friday where we talk about signalling, and the main purpose for that tutorial is really for scenario authors to understand how signalling works, because as a scenario author you have to work to within the signalling system that is implemented on the route, and therefore there are great big chunks of routes you can't start trains, for example, and if you do, then you start running into these kinds of problems, and that's all down to how the signalling is supposed to do. Anyway, so what we're doing, so we've put two player services on there, and so let's first of all get this train. So what I want to do is I want to get my train, which is this one, to route out up onto the so I want it to come following this line here, cross over, and then go on to this line. Now this is the line the HST is going on. Now maybe that's not a realistic path for this loco train to follow. I don't care right now. What I care about is showing you the principle. You work out how to apply it to your scenarios. So we've gone into, I probably did that a bit quick, so in the top left corner there's the little circle that looks like a pie chart. So we press the button, and sorry, I'm just reading the chat again, make sure I'm not missing anything. So if we zoom around, right click and drag to move around, or left click and drag to move around, mouse wheel to zoom in and out. This is going to be my player service, this is going to be my AI service. So if we start off by giving them instructions, and I think what we're going to do is just tell them to go to Haringey. Let's just tell them, I need to stop at Haringey, so let me put a player stop at Haringey. So I'm not going to go into a lot of the detailed specifics about how you do some of this stuff, so apologies if I go a bit fast. If you look at the creating a scenario from scratch video that I put up on YouTube, you'll get some of the detail of how to actually do this. So now I've put my path in, you can see that my train is going to come out and stay on this line. Now if we set a path up for the HST, which is service 2, first of all, sorry, I'm going to tick the box here. Now you'll notice the P has just appeared up there, which means this is now a player train. So if we go service 2, which is that HST, and I'm going to set the HST to go down to Finsbury Park, and we'll just tell that to go that way, and tell it it's not, don't need to add a final destination for AI. Right, so let's have a look and see what these services are going to be doing. That's better. So these services are currently not going to conflict, because this one comes down here and then this one comes across here. Now I want them to conflict. I specifically want to go out of my way and tell them to conflict. Now the HST goes via Wood Green South Up Fast, right, and I want to route via South Up Fast. So if we go back to the player, instead of going, as well as going to Haringey, I am going to put a waypoint. If I click that and tell it to go via the Up Fast, right, now this is where things get interesting, because what's happened is it's bringing the train in, it's crossing it down. Now we've got two red lines. Oh, what's going on here? So it's going down here, right, and then you'll find that the red line doesn't continue beyond here, because now it's going to reverse the player all the way back up here, across here, and then back down the way we wanted him to. Oh dear, oh dear. So now we need to be a little bit more. Now that might well be because the platform I've told him to go to, he can't get to. There you go, look, see, he can't. I've told him to go, so it's going via Hornsey. So if we keep looking down here, and there's Haringey. So actually what I've asked him to do is I've tried to ask it to go to Haringey, and it won't. The track platform just won't let me do that. So what we need to do is be a little bit more careful about what we're asking it to do. So if we keep going down, so we're not going to go to Haringey, we're going to keep going. And stop at Finsbury Park. Let's try Finsbury Park 1 for the purposes of this demo tutorial. Right. So now, how does the path look? When you're setting these paths up, it's really important that you check the red line and make sure the red line is going somewhere and is going somewhere sensible, because otherwise you can sit there and ignore the red line and realize, and just sit there trying to drive the scenario and think, oh, why has I got red light stuck here? And it's because the computer actually is expecting you to go the other way. And it won't tell you that. It just expects you to go the other way. So you do need to check all your paths and make sure they all make sense. So you can see here we've actually crossed over, and then that's put us in a good place to land. Stop at Finsbury Park platform 1. So what happens now is that let's have a look at the HST, because that might have affected the path of the HST. So we are going to come across here. In fact, that looks like it's going to do what we want it to. So, in that case, without further ado, let's press the save button. Decided obviously to run that red light. Thank you. Oh, I know why. Okay, I've broken the main golden rule here. Yeah? Never run the scenario from the scenario editor. Always come out and press replay. Because the signals get themselves into a particular state while you're on the editor, and you have to come out and go back in again in order for the signals to reset correctly. I did mention that in the previous one, but I don't write many scenarios these days, so it's stopped being muscle memory for me. Wow, this route takes a while to load on here for some reason. Well, let's do it. Oh, here we go. Right, now that's better. Now we have a green light. Now you notice I've been given a red light, so I can't proceed. That point is set correctly. That point is set, but this one isn't, because the HST has been limited through. So I'm going to come back here and just look at the lights. You do indeed have to do a turn off and on again. Kirkenstein says, can I put 921s and 321s in? I don't have anything but the default stuff in here. This is just a very, very basic install of TS 2015 Steam Edition and no DLC whatsoever. Wait for the HST to get a bit further on. So the HST is proceeding down here, and round about when he passes that signal we should get a so there's the green signal there. So when he passes that signal and clears this block, we should get permission to leave. LNER and BR, the MSTS shuffle. Now there you go. There you go. So now we've been given permission to leave. So that's getting the AI to start in front of us. Now I didn't have to do anything particular for that. So some of the things that you need to take into account when you're trying to influence it, if that hadn't have worked. Let's say I want to try and change it now to where I get priority. So let's go back into this timetable editor. So let's make player 1. Now by default everything is a special. Special is bad. Do not use special ever. Really, unless it's the last ditch resort. Special actually does some things where it switches certain things off and overrides things and tramples all over things. So if you just use express passenger, so let's set my train to express passenger, and then if I set service 2 up to be stopping passenger, and now go back to player 1, I'm now going to be given permission to leave first. So if I run that, and I'll have to come out and reload again. Now if I restart that, someone just reminded me you can press escape and do restart. So the HST is going to pull forward, but it's going to stop at the red. Yeah, don't make me out to be a liar, Mr. HST driver. Whereas I've been given the green light to carry on, so we've adjusted to be able to don't make me into a liar. Thank you. So that's better. So the HST stopped, and the we've been given the priority to leave. So we've just changed the priority. So let's go back now. What you could do if you want to hold the that train in there is give it a stop instruction. Yeah. So if the first thing we do is actually tell this train to stop where it is. So it's in Alexandra Palace. So if we tell service 2, to do let's do a passenger stop. So if we shift that up and we tell it to stop in Alexandra Palace platform 2, which is where it already is. What we can then do is we can actually time the stop a little bit more. So let's sort of say it goes after 50 seconds, or even 1 minute, let's say. Right, so it will now wait here for 1 minute. Departure time from Alexandra Palace is a minute past. Sorry, a second. 1 minute, 1 second past. And then it'll carry on from there. So now if I run that scenario, so again we have to do a restart. So Fringe Styling says, why is special there if it wasn't meant to be used? Okay, to say that it's never meant to be used is probably a bit extreme. Its use is generally wrong. Hey there, thanks for the follow, X-Skullcorn. So you'll notice the HST isn't moving now. He sort of revved up and got excited and then stopped again. So he's now doing a passenger stop. And he's going to sit there until 1 minute, 1 second pass, by which time I should be cleared and out of the way. So you can tune the station stops so that you get the right effect. Particularly towards the beginning of the scenario. You can use most of the the only priority that's a bit evil is special. So that's not to say it will never work, and sometimes you need it. Sometimes when you're trying to judge you're trying to balance a complex sequence, you can use special to just not have to worry about it, and it will work. So sometimes you do need special, but in general, try and avoid using it. So I'm trying to think what else I can go through about the priorities. Essentially, I guess the other thing with special is use it. If it works, fabulous. If it doesn't, if when you're using special you run into problems, stop using special and see if the problems go away. Because sometimes special can cause you lots of problems. But if it doesn't cause you problems, then carry on using it. Grizz says, can you address how to assign a name to sidings and main lines? That's more of a route building question, but you can add custom markers in exactly the same way. So let me show you how to do that. So let's say I want to put a marker here so that I can stop a train here or do something. Under the signal thing here, I can create, say, a siding or a destination. So let's call this a siding, as bizarre as that might be for this bit. Right, and then we'll stop being awkward. The camera angle's a bit odd for doing that bit, so let's move more friendly with it. That's it, and put that marker down there. So, but you click there, and then you click and drag, and then you make the marker. And then in here I can double click and I can type the names that I want to. So this can be Matt's siding, and then I would just copy paste it into the other field. So one of these is the internal representation, one of them is the display name. Cheers, Pie Hook. Right, so having done that, if I now go into the map view, then you can see, if we come back up to where we start, which is here, then as we leave Alexandra Palace, there is Matt's siding. And that's exactly the same for routing. Corporal says, placing route stuff is a disaster on multiple lines. Well, as long as camera angle's okay, you can generally, it's because it's picking and it's trying to find the wrong thing. So you get you'll get the hang of it. Kirkestein says, can you do rolling starts on AI? Only as part of rolling starts period. So if you set an AI, if you set everything up and get it going, I believe all the AI will start moving as well. I'm not sure. I must admit, rolling starts is not something I've really played with. Right, so that's kind of the basics of balancing your priorities. So just to review that, some of the tricks, if you want to make different services go in front of each other, then priorities is one thing, and the second thing is timings. Actually force certain timings. Now, one of the other things I've seen people do, rather than, say, for example, rather than using the flag, is to use, you can use a go via instruction. So set that to wood green, south up, reverse. Wood green, south up, fast reverse. And we will take the flag out. Now, if you look at the flag, you'll notice that there's no timings on it. Yeah, you can't see what timing it gets there. You can't control what timing it gets there. That's just a routing instruction and nothing else. It's great because it's simple, but it doesn't actually tell you very much. So, if you have a stop at instruction, then you get the timings. However, the train's obviously going to stop. That's no good. However, for player service, you've got this field here, which is the speed field. Now, if I set that to 1 mph, that now becomes a go via, even though it's still a stop at instruction. When I run that instruction, so if you see that says that's a stop at. If I now run it, and I'm not going to restart it because I don't need to, because I'm not going to drive anywhere. So if I now look at my instruction, it says go via, even though that's a stop at instruction. Yeah, and that's because I set the speed to 1 mph. You can set that speed to anything. What that speed means is it's the minimum speed that the player must go through to get this instruction ticked. So you can use that, say for example, if you've got a speed test and you want them to go through a particular marker at say 60 miles an hour in order to complete this part of the instruction, then you can set that up. However, if you set that to 1 mile per hour, then obviously they're going to, unless they stop there, they're going to get the tick on that one, which means it then turns it into a go via instruction. That means I can now put pop-ups, which you can't do with the flag. It means that I can set the timings, and I can tune all sorts of things that I can't do. I can change so this is the performance, and what the performance does is it adjusts how long, what average speed it thinks I'm going to be doing. So if the line speed is 100 miles per hour, if I set this to 75%, then all the timings would be based on me doing about 75 miles per hour. Sorry, I'm just having a look at chat, see if I'm missing any other questions. Kirkenstein, do you know what happened with the Hartford Loop? Hartford Loop was extra track that was added, so in case there was the option to put scenery on it, because it's very easy. It's once the track is in, you can add scenery, but if you don't add the track, you can't do the scenery. And since there was an opportunity to add the track was added. That's basically all there is to it. Think about it as extra track, not missing scenery. Coploper, minimum speed, but what if it's you driving on PCB and you make an accident emergency start? I never do that, because you're not paying attention. I'm always paying attention. And then you're basically screwed because you never reach the 200 kilometers an hour I asked for. That's fair enough. I mean, if you're going to put a 200 mile per hour minimum speed through an instruction, then obviously you specifically mean that you must be going that fast, and therefore if you can't do that because you messed up, then you fail this instruction and therefore the whole scenario. The thing to do is to work out whether or not you actually want that or not. If you don't specifically want it to be that high of a minimum speed, then don't use it, just set it to 1 mile per hour. So you can use that to, again, you can adjust timings. Now, one of the things I've seen people do is say that, oh, let's set that to 30, because you should be doing 30 at that point, or because you can be doing 30 at that point. And then there's a red light directly after it, because you're following an AI service. Now, you might be thinking the game would just figure that out, but if I'm supposed to pass this here at 30 miles per hour as an AI train, and remember, when the game is calculating everything, it always uses it treats everything as an AI train. So when you're adding instructions on here, let's say you set this waypoint to be at 30 miles per hour minimum, and there happens to be, in the way that we've set the scenario up, an AI train that drives in front, which means that's red at the point I'm expected to be here. The scenario will try and reroute the train around it, or it will fail and say there's no valid route. And the reason is because you've said that must be passed at a minimum of 30 miles per hour, and I can't possibly slow down and stop there. which means it can't do it. So if you don't mean 30 miles per hour, don't say 30 miles per hour. There's all sorts of problems if you set that to a minimum, because it will try and do all sorts of routing and things. So it's you need to be very careful, and if you have a problem when you set these things up to 30 miles per hour, then it will you can have problems if it's trying to follow AI. Right, what else is everyone asking? Tornado Ben, how do you set it so you can pass at any speed? Just set it to 1 mile per hour. Yeah, if you set it to 1 mile per hour, it's a go via instruction. You can pass as long as you're doing 1 mile per hour or faster, which I think is quite reasonable. Chris says make sure to mention about the percent for speed. I did already. So if the speed limit is 100 miles per hour, then the percent tells it roughly what speed to expect. So if you want to make this a really hard scenario, set that to 95% and it will recalculate that step as if you would have to do a minimum of 95% of the speed limit all the time, which is actually going to be really quite hard. Whereas if you do 75%, you can see the timings here. So this is at 1 minute. So if I set that to 95%, it's dropped down to 57 seconds. That's because it's only a tiny distance that it's got to cover. But if you imagine you're doing that over a longer period, then this is affecting the expected speed the player is, or the AI train is having to do. So if you want your AI train to be running a bit slower, just drop this figure down. So if I drop that to 50%, then that's jumped now. I've gone up to 1 minute and 5 seconds. And if you set it up to 100%, then it will run at, it's expecting running at the line speed. So you can do that with AI trains as well. Yeah, just set it to 100%. If on an AI train, set it to 100% if you want it to always run at line speed. For player services, I wouldn't go for 100% because it will be very difficult for them to keep up with that, for the player to keep up with that. But that's a way you can adjust if you want to get your timings down and make things. So if we again take this one, if I make this one 100%, that 353 became 338. Actually 303. So I go back to 75%, 303, because it's a 15-second difference. I've got a list here, Fringe. I'm not going to forget things. Right, so I think I've basically covered ways that and some of the strategies for redirecting, reprioritizing your AI. Yeah, Coplopper makes a good point actually. So AI trains don't use normal physics; they use a thing called sim-light physics, which means that essentially the acceleration profile is very, very tight, and it takes very little of account into the weight of the train or anything like that. So these timings are a rough guide. You need to run the scenario and work out what is actually possible, and then go back and adjust those percentages so that they're actually the right, to give you the right numbers. They give you a good place to start, but you absolutely can't rely on them to be 100% accurate, because it's using AI timings for everything, and AI is not the same as the way the train will actually behave. It's a much simpler thing. If AI trains were done using the full realistic physics, the game would grind to a halt, because the full realistic physics takes an awful lot of CPU. Okay, so that's rearranging your locos. Now, a really quick one. Let's say that I've got another 365. Well, let's put HST over here. And sorry, I want to put these instructions on this HST. Well, without selecting them, don't select them. Move your mouse over it, click and drag to there, and release. That's how you move the instructions. The whole lot will move. If you click and select it like that so that it's red, it won't work. Yeah, must not be. So right click until you've got nothing selected. Hover your mouse over it so that it highlights. Press and hold, move to the last destination loco, and release. Okay, you can do that to change the player loco. So, for example, if you had a freight train, you could put another loco down on the front. So, just take a really bad example. Let's put that loco down there. I could then drag that onto there. If it would That's it. And then you could take that loco. Having a bit of a problem selecting things at the moment. Once you've got the overhead lines on a railway, on these routes, they really become a bit more tricky to select. There you go. Delete that, and then you could drop that in place. Bad example, because that loco doesn't couple to that. But if you've got freight trains and things like that, that's how you would change the lead loco. So you can do that if you want to. That's quite a bizarre concept, I think. Actually, that's probably very strange. So that's how you swap locos around. I'll just do that one more time, just to make it clear. Make sure it's not selected. Yeah, if it's selected, it shows up red. Right click to deselect. Hover over it so it's yellow. Press and hold. Move over. Release. Coploper. Unfortunately, there is no way of copying. So that's moving the orders. There's no way of copying it. There's nothing you can do. If you copy and paste the consist, which I can do by selecting this one here to do copy, if I select that and then issue the copy command and then I issue the paste command, then it just pastes the consist. It's just paste. There's nothing you can do. So then I could move that onto there, but I couldn't actually take a copy of it. As much as I'd love to be able to do that, unfortunately you can't. Right, so where are we up to? Just checking on the questions again. If you want to start with an engine off, then the engine has to have a cold version. So, for example, the Centipede has a cold and dark version. GP20 has a cold and dark version. If you start with one of those, then you have to switch them on. Otherwise than that, they always start switched on. There's not a lot you can do about that, I'm afraid. Wellman says, I really thought copy would be pointless. Two trains can't go to the same place at the same time. Not strictly true if they're going to a portal. Then you can. Or you can copy the instruction. You would be good if you could copy the instruction, then just change the last one. Make it go somewhere slightly differently, for example. So what we've done moving instructions between locos, we've done AI trains and priority. So, temporary speed restrictions, that's another easy one. So, let's move to here. Actually, no, let's do it on this side, because this is the player service. Right. So, there's a trick, I don't know how many people know it. Kamoli says, can you ask the player to switch the engine off? You could pop a message box up saying press the Z key to turn the engine off. Yeah, absolutely. If you're using Loco script, if you're using Lua scripting in your scenario, there's no reason why your Lua script couldn't turn the engine off. Right, so if you press the space bar, all the track disappears and all these funny lines appear. And what these are doing is they're highlighting track properties. Now, I can't remember what the order is, but this is an interesting one. So this is track directionality. So you just keep pressing space. So if you're finding you can't route a train a particular way, it's probably because the track directionality doesn't support it. So blue means it can go in either direction. Red means it can go in one direction. So if I had a train here and I wanted to drive it that way, it would not let me do it. Yeah, and that's why. What you can do is you can change the directionality, and I'll do that again, and I'll show you that in a minute. So let's press space once more. Now this is the one I'm interested in, if memory serves. So, if we now use this tool up here, the select tool, and then we move around. Now you'll see that this track has, I'm going to point to the screen, that's really good, isn't it? If you look here, you can see that the track is highlighting. If you're in an area with multiple tracks, then it might not highlight. You'll see it's already highlighted the one on the right there. It might not always highlight the obvious one, so make sure that it's highlighting the one you want, right? And then click, and then click again once you've marked an area. Right. Now having done that, it now brings up the track properties, and we can see that passenger trains, which is the primary speed limit, is set for 60, and freight trains are set for 35, which is a secondary limit. Well, in this section here, I want it to be a 15 limit overall. There you go. You'll notice that the track properties have changed, so I can clearly see, as a scenario author, where that's actually gone wrong, or where that's changed. It's not gone wrong, it's done exactly what I asked it to. Now what I'm going to do is, if you've got the appropriate assets, here we go, we've got one actually, it's 15, so put a TSR for 15, so I'm going to drag that, click, pull it along, and we're going to put that in there. Let's just... Right, so we've got a 15 limit there, so that's just an asset that we've placed, which marks the beginning of this, and then there is an TSR termination, which we're going to put in there. Right, now so now if I play that scenario, right, now you'll notice our AI train's getting a bit funky upset now. This is the wrong train that's got the instructions, so it's going to go off and try and do some strange things now. I'm not going to worry about that. Let's just drive forward and see what happens. So you'll notice nothing on the HUD. There's that signal, and the limit starts where the 15 is. So let's move forward. And there is a signpost for the 15, and as we come into it, there the track limit has changed to 15. And if I go faster than 15, which you won't be able to before the end of the limit, actually we can. There you go. Now I'm going to get caught for speeding, even though the track speed limit is actually higher than that. As soon as we're out, that's it. Now the track has gone up to 30 limit again, now that the back of the train is out of the temporary speed restriction. Right. Tungsten Ring Boiler says, can you make a switch? I've no idea what you mean by can you make a switch. You can't change the track in a scenario. Kirkenstein says, don't you need a repeater and a warning? They're just scenery assets, so you can, yes, if you're setting them up, you should definitely put the various temporary speed restrictions in. Make sure the player is fully aware, use a pop-up to let them know that there's going to be something coming up, and then rely on them looking at the signs to actually work out what they're going to do. So, spacebar, again, when you're in the scenario author, allows it to render all the track properties slightly differently, so we can see them. And then this is our where the track speed limits. This is our TSR in here. Okay, what about adding an AWS warning? That's really a route thing as well. There's not a lot of things you can do with track when you're in a scenario. You can add markers, you can change properties. Really, you can't do much else. So if we just look through some of the other properties, this one's whether things are electrified. So if you're trying to route somewhere and you've set your own route up, if you haven't marked and you find a little sliver here that's not electrified, that will stop all trains being routed through that section, so it's worth looking. Some of these sort of they're related to the various properties that you get when you do a look, so there'll be let's come down here, that's it. So in here you can see you've got whether it's mainline, directionality, what kind of overhead, you can change the ballast, you can even change the unevenness of this particular bit of track, so let's make that 60. That should be fun. So there you go, in fact that is the unevenness we've actually changed on that one. And there's another, this is the other interesting one, and I'm going to go into this more detail, but this is the signaling, like this is where all the signaling links are. So without going into the route editor, you can kind of see where all the signals, all these green lines are where all the signaling links are. And there's really, this is one of the things that most people, when they run into problems with the dispatcher, It's because they've not understood the rules about these. So let's just take this signal for example, and I'm going to do this in the route editor just so that the links are more easily visible. Unevenness, yeah, that's the amount that it wobbles everything around when you go over it. Oh no, Bob's here. He's going to tell me I'm wrong now. So, I'll go into this in more detail on Friday, but briefly, this is a signal. This is called link 0. Fly down the end. This is all of the places you can get to from link 0 legally. Yeah? So these 3 destinations are the places that you can get to. You must, when you're placing signals, cover all of the places you can get to, whether it makes sense or not. Because otherwise, any place that your player ends up getting to is the problem you're going to have. It's brain's not working. Yeah, so what Matt's done is make his 50 mile per hour section really shaky. Correct, Bob. Yeah, so if you don't set up, say if you miss one of these links, if the player happened to go there, then the signalling system would lose the player, and that's it. From that point on, that's it. The signalling system is completely confused. So you can't do this. You have to cover every possibility. And that does make the signalling up quite tricky. Now, what can't you do? Going back to the scenario side of it. Cheers Northern 156, thanks for joining. You can't start the player train here. Okay, you can't start the player train here. Because that means that the player train won't go past this link 0 before they get to one of these links up here. So when they get to this link up here, it all gets a little bit odd. Always start the player train somewhere before link 0, and you'll run. I guess as a hard and fast rule, you can probably get away with it sometimes. As a general rule, for if things aren't working, don't do that, and you will have a lot less problems. So, as I said, I'm going to cover signalling more on Friday, but that was just a quick. That's the common thing I've seen a lot of people get wrong, is related to those signal links. The basic rule is, if a player or any AI train passes link 0, they are committed to passing link 1 or 2 or 3, whichever is the appropriate next signal. They must pass it. If they don't pass it, and say they stop and reverse, because it's what you're told to, then, well, all hell breaks loose, frankly. It just gets really bad. Right. Now, what we're going to do now, that was temporary speed restrictions. You can change track directionality in exactly the same way. Stopping points. You want to see how bumpy the track is, Marlman. Let's have a look at how bumpy the track is. Not very bumpy at all, apparently. Oh well, I guess I didn't quite get that right. Either that or the spring settings on this vehicle aren't particularly. They don't do the bumpiness. I don't know. I've not really driven that train over a bumpy track, but I'm sure I've done that in the past and it works on other locos. So, right. So, stopping points. Track IR doesn't help either. No, probably not. Let's go back into the scenario editor. 60 atoms of bumpiness. Yes, it was. There were 60 atoms sprayed all over the track. Cheers, Metro Rail fan. Thanks for joining. Skullcorn, did I say thanks for following? If not, thanks for following. Stopping points. So stopping points are kind of cool, actually. So I'm going to start my train actually before Alexandra Palace now. So I'm going to get hold of the consist, pick it up and just drag it here. Yep. And I think for the sake of my sanity, I'm going to get rid of these trains because we don't really need these now. Now what I'm going to do is tell this train to stop at the right place. Now this is, if I remember rightly, a 4-car train. So let's find the 4-car stop somewhere down here. If it's marked, there's a 3 and 4 car stop. So what we do now is we go to the signal one and we select stopping point. Now, the stopping point looks like this strange light. Don't worry about it, you can't see it. The important bit is this bit. So, the 3 and 4, you can just about see it here. That's it. Now you can see it. Is there. So we need to make sure we place it. And we also, just the same as with the quick drive stuff, you need to make sure it's placed in the right order. Now I can't select it. Oh, come on. Quit it. Thank you. Right. So if you drag that, you can do, and then pressing the shift key to move it, make sure it's pointing in the right direction, and then release. Cheers, Steve. So that's done that. Now let's name that something remotely sensible. So it's S stopping point 1. This is Ali Pally. Yeah, I'm being a bit informal. 3/4 car stop, and then we're going to put that in there. Now what we're going to do is in the settings, I'm going to get rid of these instructions, and I'm going to tell the train that I want it to go to Ali Pally 3/4 car stop. So it's appeared on this list, and then the final destination will be Ali Pally 3/4 car stop. Right, now let's run that and just see what that looks like. Now, you notice this red arrow? That's telling us exactly where we need to stop. So it doesn't show up on the map. It does say specifically where to go, though. So we pull in, and if you want to stop at the right place, you can now see exactly where the right place is. And your distance to it is now accurate. So as if you're setting up scenarios, then you can 13 feet, that's not particularly good, but never mind. Right. So that's the stopping point. In a career scenario, you can set it so that you get accuracy bonus points depending on how close you are to that particular stop. So you can actually turn that into part of the career. Mixing passenger stops with stopping points is a bit hit and miss. So I would certainly do a stop there. As Coplop Mouse just said, you can use this for AI trains, and in fact the main reason stopping point was added was for AI trains, so that you could control where an AI train stops. By default they will stop at the end of the platform marker, which is quite often not the place you want them to stop. If they're short a train or something, you want them to stop at the right place. And so what you would do is put a stopping point in, and then that would allow you to set specifically where you want these trains to stop and start. Okay, so that's stopping points. So we've got 3 more topics I want to cover, which shouldn't take too long. So one of them is scenery placement, which is kind of easy, really. There's not a lot to it. So if you wanted to, let's go into the editor. We're not in the editor, are we? So if what you wanted to do is to create a little scene, and Prince Starlin and a number of other people on the chat is particularly adept at doing this. So this is where, as a scenario author, you get to be a route builder. Let's delete that. That looks just silly. It won't let me delete that. I'll just move you into the bushes and then you'll vanish. There we go. So you could set up little scenes where you can basically, you know, you can do anything you want. Frankly, you just let your imagination run wild. Whoops. My imagination should never be allowed to run wild. Let's just put it that way and leave it there. Now, if you've never used the route editing tools before, these are the bits, some of the controls you need. So this is the translation control, which lets you move things around. If the arrow is yellow, it only moves it in one direction. And you can move it in that direction. If it's 2 bars, you can get the cross there. Now I can move it around on that, but I can't move it up and down. And if you get it into the middle, then if you're really lucky, you can move it in all. Well, actually, no, you can't move it in all 3 directions. That would be silly, Matt. Don't be silly. This is a 2D mouse. Right, rotation is that one, and in the same ways I can then rotate, or I can pick another one and rotate. Again, you press the undo button if you don't like that. This is scale. This is where you can get really, really silly. I have giant cars. So today, I'm sorry that this today's service is delayed because of a giant car someone's deployed on the track. There we go. We have a giant car which has fallen on the track because, what do you know, the road wasn't big enough to hold it. Oh, I can see Fringe Styling having fun with that one. So the list of assets that you have available to you is smaller than you would as a route developer, but you have access to a decent number. What I would suggest is do stuff which is appropriate for what you're trying to do. That's probably not appropriate, but you can do some interesting stuff. Just trying to have a quick look at what else you can do around here. So one of the things that I've seen people do is put people around. So under here you've got cars, you've got dogs. So let's stick a dog on the station. So put the dog in, and then we move the dog up, and then we can move the dog somewhere onto the platform. And then you can put a there's a seat. There's a seat. So let's stand him up, move him around again. Use the rotate control, and back to the translate control, and seat him on there. There you go. So you can now change the way the route looks and make it appropriate for what you want to do. You want to cow on the track. I think cow on the track has to be done. That's a dog. So let's have a cow on the track. One cow on the track. There's usually a number of characters. I can't find the characters in here. So different routes are going to have different assets available. And basically just be creative with the assets you've got. If you're saying that there's a tree fallen down, then, well, let's find a tree. And let's, well, you know what? Let's use the rotation tool. Knock it down. Yeah, so if you're saying there's a tree on the line and that's why we can't get past, it's got leaves on the line in epic style, then put a tree on the line. That just makes it a lot better. A lot more realistic, a lot believable. You're trying to sell a story with a scenario, so make the story believable by adding assets in appropriate for it. Okay, that looks really silly. Alright, so that was scenery placement and scene construction. I really want to see lots of people using extra scenery. there are a number of static trains in the default legacy assets, like the 43. There's a BR294, BR101, freight wagon, and you can use that to make sort of crash train scenes up almost if you want to. French Styling again has been quite good at using that. Minor delays at Ali Pali, says Moleman, yeah. A giant car crashed into a tree and the dog laughed. And the cow just sat down for a rest. Will a lot of assets like cows, dogs slow the frame rate? Yes, if you use tons and tons and tons of assets, but if you use a sensible number, it won't have any noticeable effect. Oh, that's pretty bad, Joe. I don't actually have any train assets, I don't think. Let's have a quick look and see what there is in here. So there are actually some lights. That's just a normal diffuse light, so that's actually going to lighten everything. There you go, look. So you can add lights into the scene as well if you want to. And there you go, there's a red light, so you can add extra lights in based on what you've got. And it's all down to whatever there is in the list here, unless you start going to make your own thing. Sight light. What else have we got in here? Yeah, there's no trains in here, unfortunately. Right. Can you make any train a static asset, Matt? Yeah, it has to be done by the creator of the train. I mean, in theory, you can. You just create the blueprint manually and then just make it reference the IGS file. And if you know what I just said, then it's going to be trivial for you to make it. But you're not going to be able to then share the scenario with anyone without sharing all the blueprints for them as well. And Codeplot says, what's a loco headlight? Basically, those are assets. So when the loco creator makes a loco, they create a number of things that go with it, like loco headlight and so forth. If they tick a box that says it's available, it will appear here. Even though it doesn't necessarily make sense for it to appear here, it just will. This sort of mixed bag here has just got everything that's been ticked as available for scenarios, rightly or wrong. So it's been suggested I enable a German route, so I'm going to enable a German route. Once that finishes doing its thing, what have we got in here? I'm not seeing any locos in that pile. But anyway, I think you all get the point. That's pretty much how to do that. Right, so I'm going to tick that one off. Right, T-Kink. So what's next? One more. We've got two more to do. Converting a careers to a standard. Actually, before we do that, if you're in this scene here, and you ever want to recalculate anything, just hit F5. Yeah, that will cause a complete recalculation of everything in the database, in the time zone. Do recalculate the whole lot. So it looks like it's got kind of confused. Just press F5. Joe, make sure you tell somebody at the school and get it dealt with. The school will look after that sort of rubbish. Right. There's no static R101 there. Tungsten, I'm doing scenario build. Okay. So there's two things left to do. Right, let's do converting a scenario. So we're going to change that. So this is... I'm going to come out of the game now, and I'm going to have to add another share to share my desktop. So bear with me a moment while I come out of the game. Actually, I'm not going to come out of the game. Don't be silly. Let's make life easy. So if we go into build, and under scenario, we find our little scenario, which is called test scenario. There is a button called open. So this is the home directory of that scenario. So let's click open, and it's going to pop it up in a window that you can't see. There you go. Now you can see it. Hopefully, can you read that all right? So in the this window, sorry, just reading the chat. Is there a way to disable the dispatcher recalculating everything while our passenger stops? When I make my first trip, it goes fast, everything is fine, but then I have more, it goes slower. Well, I'm going to show you a tip actually, which is not commonly known, it's yeah, so I'll show you there's a possible way of doing it. It's not fully supported way of doing it, but it can be useful. But anyway, converting a career scenario. So if I right click, now I've got Notepad++ on here. If you just Google Notepad+, or if someone can paste the link into the chat, or you can just open it in Notepad. Either way, load it into a text editor of some description. Scenario properties.xml. It's got lots of stuff in it, and I won't worry too much about all of the stuff. What you're looking for is, if you scroll down a little bit, is this bit that says E standard scenario class. And what you need to do is change the word standard to the word career, and then save it. That's it. That scenario is now a career scenario. So I'm now going to exit the game and come back in, and then what I'm going to do, right, now if I go into build, and I go into scenario, and I look at London Peterborough, I've now got it in the career section, not the standard section. GeForce, yes, this will all be going on YouTube. So that's now in there. Now if I edit that scenario, right, so if we wait for this to load, so there's two steps to changing the scenario from standard to career. First is to change that type that we just did in the notepad file, that fundamentally changed it to career. Secondly, we've got to set it up as a career scenario. So once it's finished loading, by setting it up as a career scenario, what I mean is this option has now appeared over here. This little train option, which is the career scenario. So if I click that, this now gives me all the options for setting up a career scenario. So we can change, for example, arrival points. So if there were 10 station stops, then I would need that to be 100. Yeah, because each one gets one lot of it. Each time you do a timed passenger stop, you will get 100 points. So we can tune that. That other thing I showed you with the stopping point is these three here. So this is the maximum number of points that you can get. So if I stopped exactly on the marker, I'd get 200 accuracy bonus. If this setting is the penalty per meter. So at this setting, I'm going to lose a point off of that 200 every meter. And this is the maximum penalty I can get. So if I stop really worst, I can lose 300 points of lose 500 points of my score. So if I set that to no, I think that will lose 300 points actually. So if I set that to 200 point penalty, then I'm going to end up with somewhere between 0 and 200 points. Now I probably want to make it less than 200 meters. So if I was to say make that a 50 point penalty, then I've got to stop within 4 meters in order to get any score at all. This is where you set your medals up. So this is all standard career stuff. But now having done that and then saved it, that is now a fully careerized scenario. It's now added all the extra information. You can see it's now running it with that point, with the score on the bottom left. Right, now, let me just switch it back to changing route for a minute while I get this last one up and ready. Because I've kind of forgotten how to do it, and I need to just get the right command line parameter, and then I will show you what that command line parameter is. Bear with me, folks. If this works, then I will just show you. I'll come out again and show you how I got here. It's been ages since I used it, which is bad because it's really, really useful. HD Gaming, the other week we were talking about HST pulling freight. If the couplings are set up to support it, then yes, so it's down to the couplings and the way that it's been set up. In theory, yes, if the couplings are set up. So, I'll let you see again while we're just... So what I'm at this point, all I'm doing is I'm editing that scenario. This is the last bit, and then we'll get on and do another scenario. Is this useful? Has this answered any of the questions? Has it made loads more questions? Right, so let's see if I got it right. So if I find my player service, where's my player service? It's around here. It's over here. I did. Right. You see this button here that's not very visible, and I've had to enable this with the command line option, so that it's not officially a supported thing, it's just a backdoor. If you click that button, you get this really neat little button up here, and this I can do an apply, which will cause a recalculation of all the AI. Refresh will then re-update this list. If I untick that box, it will stop calculating that AI service. Okay, so if I click apply, it says not applicable because that's not being recalculated. Yeah. If I click it again and then I click apply, then it'll recalc. So if you've got a whole bunch of AI services and you're trying to work out why it doesn't work, you could start unticking them, clicking apply, and then it'll try and evaluate them as if that AI service wasn't there. Kind of. It just stops evaluating it entirely. There's a bunch of stuff that this doesn't really cope with, and that's why it's not sort of a full-fledged feature. But just on its own here, it's actually really useful if you've got a bunch of stuff. What I don't know is, if you untick that, will it now stop calculating it entirely? So that's something I'll leave you to experiment with and find out. How did I get here? How I got here was I added a command line parameter -ShowDriverList. I'll put it on the that, and you do that in the set launch options. So let me come out of the game and show you, just show you how to do that. Right, so in here, you right-click, Properties, Set Launch Options, Show Driver List, and then run the game. Skype is minimized. Right, so if I go back into build and scenario and go into my career scenario, the one I just converted, and press edit, wait for this to load up, and then I'll just remind you how to get into it, because it's only in one specific menu, and it's sort of buried in the background of that menu. Here in a minute. Right, so if you find your train, now the thing to do is it's the disc at the front. You have to click the driver disc. Yeah, if you do it via the timetable screen and click that one, it's not on that screen. So you can only get it by clicking on the disc. And then it's this button that's sort of buried behind here. If you click that, you can get over up to this button. But you'll notice it's even themed as the old rail works, so it's just not been touched. So you can untick it, and then you can work out whether or not it's actually all worked or not by looking to see whether or not they all succeeded. Right, I think I'm done with boring you all to death with tutorial stuff. So let's go to the raffle, because you've all been putting up with so much stuff. Hope that was useful anyway. Shame if it wasn't. Right. Coplover says he has one more pro tip for scenario creators before we start the raffle. Go for it, because it hasn't connected to the chat yet anyway, so. So Coploper says if you add the enable async keys to launch parameters, you can speed up time with the, I think it's control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's very good. Use it with care. Use it with the greatest of care, because it's same as if you're familiar with MSTS, you could run the scenario up and down in the